Hi, it's me, Ingrid INFP, and I wanted to talk about genealogy, my Jewish ancestry, and and how this all connects to the Mormon Church. Okay, so what happened last night is that I was pretty stressed out about my driving situation, where I don't know how to drive and I can't manage to plan out going to so many different classes and pay for them, and the amount of energy that it takes. It is one of my biggest triggers. I cannot even talk about it without, Anyway, so I was feeling really anxious about that, and then I went on YouTube, as you do, to distract yourself from things, and then I got into my special interest, which is Mormon polygamist cults, but also cults in general, but mostly Mormon polygamist cults. Mormonism is not polygamy, they don't practice polygamy, but the sects that branched out from Mormonism, once Utah decided that they wanted to become a state, they needed to stop with polygamy. So that's when the sects decided, no, we want to live polygamy just like our founder, Joseph Smith, who was a polygamist. He believed that in order to get into the highest level of heaven, you had to have several wives, because he himself had many wives. Some of them underage, some of them were already married. There was a lot of problematic things with the founder of the Mormon Church, Joseph Smith. So the mainstream Mormons decided that, okay, we want Utah to become a state, which is where they lived. And so therefore we will stop with polygamy. And you only need to practice polygamy in heaven, not on earth. So so that's how it branched off, that there were the polygamist sects, and then there was the Mormon Church, who does not practice polygamy, at least on earth. And yet, Mormonism is a cult, so that's why I'm interested in them. And one of the things that they do as a weird religion is that they really control the lives of their members, and they do all sorts of weird things. And one of them is that they baptize people for dead people. So they will use you as a proxy. So the YouTube video that I was watching was an ex-Mormon member, and she talked about how when she was 12, she had to get dunked into the water, be baptized for people who were already dead, in their stead, So they would make her get baptized for 10 different people, and they would say the names of they would say a prayer with the name of the person, and then they would dunk her under the water. And that would mean that this person, who is already dead, is baptized into the Mormon Church, even though they've been dead for hundreds of years. So, so these people who are dead, they cannot consent, right, to becoming baptized Mormon. And some people who are dead already had their own religion. And also, the person who is getting baptized, in real life, has to be related, however distantly, to the people that they're baptizing for, So it doesn't matter if it's 300 years ago and it's somebody who is only very distantly related to you. You will want to baptize that person if you are Mormon, because you want everybody to get into the highest level of heaven, which is, the Mormon heaven. But Mormonism has even higher levels of heaven, but they want people in general to get into heaven. Those of us who aren't Mormon, we get thrown into basically this limbo of nothingness. So it's not great for us. So I understand that Mormons want their ancestors to get into Mormon heaven, which is much better. But they don't take into account people's wishes. So apparently Anne Frank has been Mormon baptized by one of her descendants, I guess. And also Adolf Hitler has also been baptized within the Mormon Church, which, first of all, he does not deserve to be in any kind of heaven. And also Anne Frank is Jewish, so I don't know if she even believes in heaven. And also she does not deserve to be in the same heaven as Adolf Hitler in that case. So there's a lot of stuff that is wrong with that, but that's how they got so good at genealogy, because the members will look at records, they will put things together and create a family tree for themselves, and in order to baptize as many people as they can. So they're doing all of this extra work for free. That is actually useful for people in terms of genealogy. It's not just very practical use for people. But so anyway, that's how I got into the subject of genealogy. And I got interested into my mom's family tree because I've been interested in my dad's, but I've been interested in my mom's for quite a few reasons. One of them is that they are Ashkenazi Jew, and I never was educated in like the Jewish culture. I know that my uncles have been, like, they know about Jewish things, and they married Ashkenazi Jew women. They're not like really practicing, but they still acknowledge that they're part of the culture. Well, my mom does not acknowledge that really at all. I don't think my grandparents really acknowledged it either, but they both came from pretty Jewish families. And I found out so that my great-grandparents were born in Lithuania, or Russia at the time, but their records are in Lithuania, so it's quite probable that they were born and got married in Lithuania. And then they moved to the United States, to, you know, the East Coast. Some of them lived in Manhattan, some of them, you know, like they came to US as immigrants, the way most Americans did. Those aren't Native American, but they came in the early, like the 1900s. And then they moved to New Jersey, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Virginia, that area. And that's where my mom's side of the family has been living ever since. It's one of the places with the most Jewish people in the world. And it's a whole culture and community that I have never been part of, but that my cousins seem to have a part of. I know that when my cousins got married, they did not really do a Jewish wedding, but they themselves have been to a lot of Jewish weddings, because they're friends, they're part of this community, and they do go to the synagogue sometimes. Being Jewish is complicated because sometimes you are really into the church, or not the church, the synagogue. You go and do all of these community things and read the Torah and all that. But I think that for my cousins, it mostly limited itself to going to Hebrew school when they were small and wearing a kippah and celebrating Hanukkah and, you know, the Sabbath day. And I don't think that they do anything like with the strict rules of, like, you know, separating milk with other meat products and all that stuff. They're not like strict practicing. But I've always felt like, okay, there's a disconnect between me and my cousins and my uncles, because my mom never mentioned the fact that technically we are ethnically of Ashkenazi Jew descent. So now I'm finding out that my great-grandparents were Jewish and left Lithuania/Russia because of probably persecution reasons, and then they that's why my family is American. You know, I'm just piecing things together. I don't have like a written history of my family, but this is what I'm piecing from the information that I have. Now, I'm not going to be talking about the last name of my family and everything, but it is Eastern European. And Lithuania was kind of part of, like, a lot of Jewish people lived in Poland and Lithuania, that part of Russia, Ukraine, and unfortunately a lot of it got split up throughout the world. Now, I'm sorry that I dissed Lithuania in my last live, because I don't know what there is in Lithuania. Now I know that I am actually 100% Lithuanian from my mom's side, so I'd probably be like a little bit less than 50% Lithuanian, because all of my mom's grandparents were originally from Lithuania, according to these records. Maybe they're from other parts of Russia or Eastern Europe. You know, they could be from Poland or something like that. I think that my grandmother's side of the family was a little bit more towards Ukraine, while I think that my grandfather's side of the family was more Lithuania. So that's from what I was researching. But what I was specifically researching was my grandfather, who I never knew, because he died at the age of 60 in 1977 of pancreatic cancer when my mom was 20. So my mom has been affected by this because she was about to go to medical school, and then she decided to do a 360 and go into marketing instead. Because my grandfather was really into education. He was a mathematician, a statistician. He was kind of a nerd, from what I can understand. He liked reading the newspaper and just like learning things. While my grandmother was more of like an ESTJ type of person who just was really ambitious and really worked hard. She became a real estate agent, and she won a seamstress competition, was a seamstress for a while, then she became the real estate agent. She worked until she got a stroke, and I never really got to speak to her much because of her stroke. It made it difficult for her to talk, and it made her difficult for her to write legibly enough for a child to read, you know. So I never really got a good grasp on things about my grandparents, especially I think that my mom was really close to her dad and not to her mom. So because it seems like my grandfather really liked, you know, was really interested in school, which my mom was also really interested in, and yeah, I think that really affected my mom pretty deeply. But okay, so now let's get into it. So my grandfather, his dad was called Isaac, and so my grandfather was born in 1917, and his father, Isaac, got married to an Emma, and they were born in the 1880s, and then my great-grandfather died in 1928. And his wife lived until quite a long time, actually. And so I guess that my mom had a grandmother, but not a grandfather on her dad's side. And then, so that was Isaac and Emma. And they were born in Lithuania a long time ago. And they both moved to Philadelphia, and then had my grandfather. And so that's my great-grandparents. My great-great-grandparents were called Eli and Lena Lea or something. Muscovich was the last name of my great-great-grandmother, which kind of tells you where they were from, which was Russia at the time, but it was Lithuania. And if you go even further to my great-great-great-grandparents, let me just check. So wait, Isaac was my great-grandfather, who had several children, including my grandfather and my great-uncle, Uncle Herman, who is the person that I'm going to put as the cover picture on this video. My great-uncle was not great with kids, but he was a pianist, and he really loved to play the piano, and I got quite a lot of money from him, actually, which is, you know. But I think that there were several other brothers and sisters. There was a Ruth, there was an Esther, there were more. So Isaac had all these children. So he was my great-grandfather. Eli was my great-great-grandfather, who married Lena Moscovich. And Eli, or Elias, was born in 1851 and died in 1914. Now, Baruch was Elias' dad, and he was born approximately 1825. And he was, I mean, these are people who lived in Eastern Europe a long time ago. And he married a Hannah, and his father was called Shmaia, and he married an Ida. And those people were born in 1805. And that's as far into the past that we can go. And I found it pretty interesting to go through all that. It ends up... okay, so Isaac, my great-grandfather. Okay, Isaac, my great-grandfather. Elias, my great-great-grandfather. Baruch, my great-great-great-grandfather. And Shmaia, my great-great-great-great-grandfather. They were all in Russia or in Lithuania during the 1800s. And then my ancestor Isaac decided to move to the United States. So then I looked up my great-grandfather's wife, Emma, and Emma's brother married into some other family. Emma's sister, I think, married another family, and they were called the Perlman. So these Perlmans are not connected to me in any way. But it's interesting because one of Perlman's descendants decided to write a whole book about his family and how he remembered his parents and his grandparents and all that. And so in there is a name that is Emma's last name, basically. My great-grandmother, who was, well, basically related, not by blood, to the Perlmans. So the Perlmans, and so it was interesting because this descendant was writing a book about it, and it was interesting to read about how, this is probably how my ancestors lived, because they lived in the same community in Lithuania as Jewish Ashkenazi Jew people around the same time period. And the Perlmans also decided at the same time as my family to leave for New York and Philadelphia at the beginning of the 1900s. So there are parallels between these two families. And so I found out that, they were very traditional and did all the Jewish things where they, separated meats and milks, and separated different types of cloths, and they did all of the Sabbath and all these traditions. And Perlman's, he remembered that his mom could not read or write, yet she could a lot of languages, and she really wanted to be educated, but there was always something else in the way. And it's quite sad that a lot of women were not allowed to, they were discouraged from reading and writing. Even if they were encouraged to learn things, they were limited by the period, you know. And she could have been really bright and you know, contributed to a lot of things, but instead she was stuck inside with her family. And she was probably happy that way, I don't know, but it's sad that a lot of women just accepted their fate at the time of like, okay, they would never be able to read or write. And then they would follow their spouse to the United States and have to learn a lot of new things, including different languages and such. But they would still be discouraged from learning to read and write. And yeah, so it was really interesting to see what the sort of things that they would do and how they were, and maybe my ancestors were similar. I don't know, because nobody has written about them. But so here we come to the crux of this. Why did I start talking about Mormonism at the beginning of the video? Because I saw that most of the records and the information about my family comes from Provo, Utah. Provo, Utah is where Brigham Young University is, and that's where most Mormons live. And some Mormon somewhere transcribed all this information. So hopefully this Mormon was somebody who was just doing this out of the goodness of his heart, but probably not, because why would they be doing the genealogy of my family? Probably because they wanted to baptize my ancestors and into the Mormon church, even though my ancestors were Jewish. Because that's the reason that they're doing the genealogy, is so that they can baptize as many people as possible. And so I'm guessing that somebody got themselves baptized for my great-great-great-grandparents, you know? And that's sad, because that's against their will. And I mean, I guess if they are in some heaven somewhere, they don't want to be ripped out into Mormon heaven. And even if they're not in heaven, like, you know, they shouldn't be forced to get baptized as a Mormon after they're dead. And also, you know, it's kind of like this Mormon person who got baptized for my from my ancestors, probably, you know, did not respect the religion of my ancestors. And so I'm really grateful that somebody went through all that work of transcribing like the marriage records and the birth records and the Census Bureau records, and that they created a family tree and everything. Or maybe it was somebody who wasn't Mormon who created the family tree out of the records that were transcribed. But I think that they were also Mormon, because all of this was done in Provo, Utah. And none of my ancestors are from Provo, Utah. So it must have been somebody who's very distantly related to my ancestors. But Mormons will look at records that are like several hundred years old. Like they will look for the most distantly related relative ever. So it doesn't matter how distantly related they are, they will get baptized for those ancestors. And yeah, so maybe my ancestors are in the same level of heaven as Anne Frank and as Adolf Hitler, which would suck. But you know, it's kind of a weird thought that the reason I was able to go through on this rabbit hole was because of Mormon people looking things up and having such a great census, you know, all of these records, and somebody going through them, like meticulously writing down dates and such for my great grandfather, you know. And that's why it's so much easier for me to find records about my mom's side of the family compared to my dad's side of the family, because my dad's side of the family were not American, and therefore there is less likely that there is some Mormon person that will research up this whole genealogy. Yeah, that was a really weird coincidence, but that's, or like weird connection. Like, I hadn't gone into genealogy thinking of finding something that was connected to the Mormon church. I just thought of genealogy because of watching that video. But yeah, so that's how it was, I guess. It made me think a lot about, like, why did my mom decide to cut herself off from being Jewish? Like, I don't consider myself Jewish, but that's because my mom doesn't consider herself Jewish. It might be different if my mom considered herself Jewish. Probably almost 50% of my DNA is Ashkenazi Jew, you know, considering that all of my mom's grandparents are Ashkenazi Jew, except the fact that some of them were from Lithuania and some of them were from Ukraine. Yeah, it's weird to think, like, what happened along the way? Is it my grandmother? Did she decide to cut herself off from the traditional Jewish stuff? Is it my grandfather? Is it both of them? Is it my mom only? And like, maybe my mom was taught about a bunch of Jewish things that she never told me about. I don't know. I'm just wanting to know more, I guess. And also feeling a little bit sad for my ancestors who got baptized into the Mormon church against their will. And also, I'm quite proud of them, you know, that they were being persecuted in Russia or Lithuania in the 1880s or something, and then they decided that they'd had enough and they wanted to get a new life in the United States, and decided to start a whole new life. Probably my female ancestors were without an education, and yet they decided to bravely find their way through the United States. And I don't know, it's quite humbling to look at genealogy, you know, like, and also like, how much of this is part of myself? How much of this is the generational trauma? Like, how much of this have I gotten? Am I connected to these people at all at this point? Has this informed the decisions of, like, you know, what informed the decisions of all my ancestors to get me to this point where I am today? I think that this is really interesting. I did not know I had the Lithuanian roots until yesterday, basically. I had looked at my grandmother's stuff, like maybe a year ago or something. I looked at my grandmother on my mom's side, and I found out that they were also from Eastern Europe, but probably more from like Belarus, Ukraine area. But they decided to leave for the United States at approximately the same time, because Jews were being persecuted at that time, as always, but a lot more during certain periods. And yeah, it's very interesting. And it's interesting that I got to that point from watching a video about Mormons. because I don't have any Mormons directly in my family tree. But there is somebody who is very distantly related to me, related to somebody somewhere in my tree, that was really interested in getting to know what dates there were. So I'm thankful for that, but at the same time, like, I don't want to thank them too much because they are doing this for the purpose of furthering their own religion against the religion of my ancestors. Yeah, I'm just wanting to know more. I wonder if you guys have gone on a genealogical journey, if you guys have any Jewish descent. How does that work? If you have a Jewish descent, but your parents don't consider themselves Jewish, like, what do you do? I am not religious in any way, so I don't know what that means. But yeah, I'm interested in any thoughts about this, because this was quite groundbreaking to me at like 1 a.m. Yeah, so have a great day, everybody. Bye.